Hey, what is up everyone, and welcome back to another video. In today's video we are going to be building an advanced MERN stack application that handles authentication all the way from the user registering, creating tokens, saving tokens in local storage in the browser, protecting routes, and having the ability to reset your password with sending emails to the client and so forth. So this is going to be a really big video or project, and I really hope you enjoy. So let's demo what we will be building today. So first off, I have my MongoDB instance running in the background. So I'm not using MongoDB Atlas, I'm just using the local setup. If you don't have MongoDB locally set up, I will link a video at the top where you can go and view how to do that. Okay, so basically what I'm going to do here is I'm first going to register a user, and I'm going to register a user with one of my emails so we are able to view everything. So let's start. I'm going to say Lloyd JV Rainsberg at gmail.com, and then a password I'm just going to place 123456 123456. And if I were to type these passwords incorrectly, so I'm gonna just add it like this and say register, it says passwords do not match. It clears both of the passwords, and then the error message disappears. So I'm just gonna do this right now and register. It's gonna register me in the database. You can see here we have an authentication token with our JSON web token being saved, and we have access to some private routes or anything that you want to not have the unlogged in user be able to view. So if I were to log out, we can see that the auth token is going to disappear, and it's going to redirect us to login. So if I were to log in now with that same account, so Lloyd JV Rainsberg at gmail.com, and then password is 123456, and I log in, I am able to view it here and everything the same. So if I also here type in anything incorrectly, we have form validation and everything from that sort. So say I forgot my password and I would like to reset my password, I can just click on this reset password link, and here it asks me to provide an email address that I used in this application. So I'm going to say Lloyd JV Rainsberg at gmail.com, and then I'm going to press send. Now this is going to go to our backend and send us an email. So I'm going to go to Gmail, going to open up here, and then we can see I got an email from the full stack Junkie password reset request. So here it says, please go to this link to reset your password. I can copy this or click directly on it, and it will open or redirect me to our application's reset password page. Here I'm able to type in the new password, so I'm just going to type in here 123457 123457, and then reset. It's going to say password reset success, and then give you a link to log back in. Okay, so if I click here and I were to go and use my old password now, so the 1 through 6, so Rainsberg at gmail.com 123456, and log in, it's going to say invalid credentials, which is correct. And if I use the newly created password now, 12345 and then 7, and log in, we can see we have access to that route. So this is a pretty advanced video. It has everything you need to get your website secure and up and running. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so I'm back here inside of my folder. I just created a folder on my desktop called Advanced Node Auth. And the first thing I would like to do is just go and set up our folder structure for this project. So I'm going to make a directory for my front end, and I'm going to call it client. So in my command line, and I'm using Visual Studio Code, would highly recommend that. And just to get started, if you haven't watched my video where I explain the workflow of how this type of authentication work, I would also link that video up and you can go and watch that. Okay, so let's start. I'm gonna make dir for make directory, and then I'm gonna make a client folder. It should pop up here. Okay, great. And I'm gonna cd into that client. Let's actually not do that yet. So first off, in our root directory, so not in the client, I want to say npm init-y, so it will create us a package.json and then just fill out everything for us. And then I want to create a server.js file, so I can say touch server.js. It will create us a server.js file. Okay, so if I confuse files and folders with one another, just stick with me, bear with me. It's hard enough explaining and coding at the same time. Okay, so in my package.json, I'm just going to set the main to, instead of index.js, to server.js. Okay, so let's build out the rest. Okay, so I'm going to need the following folders. I'm going to need controllers. I'm going to need routes. I'm going to need models. I'm going to need middleware. I'm going to need utils. And then I think the last one is config. Okay, so I'm going to create all of that. Okay, nice and quick. And then for, did I spell this incorrectly? Yes. Utils. So it's nice and green. Okay, so the next thing I would like to do is create our front end build to get that up and running. So I'm going to go into my VS Code terminal, and here I'm just going to cd into the client folder, and I'm going to run npx create react-app, create-react-app, and then just full stop, and this would create it in that client folder. I'm going to run this, and while that is running, I'm going to go back in here, and I'm going to start installing two packages we need. One is a dev dependency, and the other one is our server. So I'm going to say npm I express. So this is back in our root directory, so not in the client. Install express. Awesome. And then once the client is done installing and the boilerplate is set up for our React app, I'm going to set up our git ignore. So let's create that file. So touch in our root directory .git ignore, and then yeah, that should create it. There you go. Okay, so in here we're going to place our every folder we do not want to track in our Git repository. We don't have a Git repository yet, but we'll do that as soon as the front end build is done. While we're waiting for that, we can actually go into our server folder and create our basic Express front end, our basic Express server boilerplate. So we can say const express equals require express. We can say initialize that into an app variable, so express, and then we can say const port. This port will be equal to whatever is in the process.env.port variable. Else, if there is no such variable, we just want the port to run on 5000. And then we would like to go to app.listen and set this equal to that port. And once that is listening on that port, we want to console.log backticks server running on port, and then we place the port variable in here. Okay, so this is the basic boilerplate to get this up and running, and we can actually test this by just saying node in our root directory. You can say node server.js, and it prints out running on port 5000. So this is all working really nicely. Okay, so if you don't know what I did here, I would suggest going looking at some beginner Express videos so that you understand what is happening here. Okay, the next thing I want to do is actually set up this process.env setup. So what we're going to need for that, so in our root directory, we want to install a package called .env. So we can say npm.env, npmi.env. This will install the .env package, and we are able to require it at the top of our server file. So this is important that it should be at the top. So we can say require.env, and then we run the function config on this package. And to this config function, we pass an object with the path field, and we set this path equal to ./config.env. So we don't have this config.env folder yet, a file yet. So let's quickly create that. In our root directory, we can say touch and just call it config.env and save. It should pop up down here. Great stuff. Okay, so in here, I'm just going to create, in my config file, I'm just going to create a port variable and set this equal to 5000 and save this. So now this process.env will be loaded from our config folder up here, file up here. Okay, so with that done, this looks almost done with our file setup. I just want to clear, so in our front end folder, so in our client folder, we want to run the following command, rm-rf, and then the .git. So we want to remove the git repository, and we want to create it in our root directory. So let's go into our root directory. If you're getting confused with me switching between these two terminals, just let me know in the comments. I think this is just easier and quicker, and it's very good practice to learn how to work with terminal. Okay, so in our root directory, I want to do the following. I want to say git init, and this will create a master branch. And in here, in this git ignore, we now want to ignore all of the node modules and the config.env file. So let's do that. So in our client, you can see this is grayed out because of this git ignore. So let's copy everything in this git ignore. So copy. And let's paste it in our root directory git ignore. Okay. We're going to change a few things here. First, here at the top with the node modules, we remove this slash from there and put it at the front. And then we can just, okay, we actually didn't have to remove that at the front. So if we go back, we can add it like this and then just copy it back down. And instead of having the slash at the front, we put the slash at the end. And then down here, where all of the envs are, we can say config.env and save this. Okay, so if we save this and now delete the git ignore in our client folder, so we can say delete. Now all of the node modules and config should be grayed out. So the node modules inside of our client is grayed out, node modules inside of our root or our backend is grayed out, and then the config is grayed out. So this is all done. So yeah, this looks all complete for me now. We have the server set up and everything. Yeah, okay, this is great. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start building our route logic, and we're going to be testing it with Postman. So let's do that next. Okay, so let's start off in the controllers folder. Basically what we're going to do here is just going to create the end route functions for all of our routes, and then we'll go and create the routes, and then we'll connect the routes to our server.js file. So in our controllers folder, we can create a auth.js file, and in here we're just going to create that functions. So I can say exports, and then the function dot the function name. The first function is going to be register, and this function is going to have access to the request, response, and next. So we can say request, response, and next. The next is very important, as we're going to use that for error handling later. So first off, we can just say res.send and say this is register route, just like that, and save. We can actually copy this now and paste it down here, and we can name this login. It will have access to request, response, and next as well, and here we'll just send back login route for now. Then we can copy this again and paste and change this register to forgot password. So this is the function name, forgot password, and this is the forgot password route. And the last route for the authentication will be the reset password. So reset password, and here we can say reset password route. So we can save this now, and this export will export it as named exports. So I'll show you what that means in just a second. So we can close this up and go into our routes folder and create a auth.js file. And in here, we're going to do the following. First off, we have to bring in Express because we're going to be routing to our controllers. So we can say const express equals require express. Then instead of using the app that we have in the server.js, here we can create a router and set this router equal to the express.router function, just like this. Then the important thing to do here is export that router variable. Okay, in here, now we can create our different routes to route to that different controllers. So I'm going to say router.route, and we're going to route to the /login, or let's first start with the /register. And this is going to be a post request. So if you haven't seen this type of syntax yet, this is almost the exact same as doing router.post and then saying register like this and then passing in the functions in here. You can do it like this if you'd like. I just prefer doing it like this because it just it makes it easier to read. And then all of the functions and middleware will be passed in here. So at the post, we want to bring in that register controller. So let's import that. So we can say const, and then we're going to destructure from the require. And here we're going to require inside of the controllers, the auth file. And here we want to bring in the register function. So now we can pass in here the register function. So this route, if we hit this route, it will, and it's a post request, we will run the register controller function. So I'm going to copy this once again and then bring it down here. And instead of going to register, we're going to go to login. And now we have to bring in the login function. So we can say login and just add it down here under login. Okay, and do this for all two of the other routes. So the next route is forgot password. And this will also be a post request as we'll be sending something in the body. And this will be the forgot password function. And you can see it automatically imported for me as well at the top. And then the last route is going to be the reset password route. So it's going to be reset password. And if you remember from my explanation, it's going to be / and then some reset token that we are going to create. So in the forgot password, we're going to create a reset password token. So here we're going to expect reset token. And then we want to add the reset password controller function. So everything is brought in correctly, and we can save this now. The last thing we need to do to get these routes working is connect them up to our server.js. So let's close this up, go to our server.js, and in here, just below the app declaration, we can say app.use express.json. And this is just a piece of middleware that will allow us to get data from the body, so the request.body. Okay, now we want to connect our route. So we can say app.use, and then we want to redirect anything that goes to API/auth. We want to redirect that to require, and then in here we can navigate to the routes folder and then the auth file. So basically what happens here, whenever a request comes in, this piece of middleware catches it and checks if it's to API/auth something, then it will be redirected to the auth router. Okay, and if we save this now and get our server running, so let's actually create our script to run our server. And we actually don't have NodeMon installed yet, so let's quickly do that. So in our root directory, we're going to say npm I dash capital letter D nodemon. This will just help restarting our server when we change anything. Okay, so let's set up that nodemon script in our package.json. Here under the scripts, our first script is always the start script, and the start script will basically just run node server.js. And then the next script we want to create for our nodemon is server. We'll call it server. And here we want to run nodemon server.js. So if we save this and we close this up and go to our root directory in the command line and say npm run that server script, we should see nodemon throwing us an error here. So let's check this out. Oh, here. Okay, so we did something wrong in our process.env. So this looks like a silly mistake. In our process.env, this shouldn't have a semicolon over there. So we can save this. And I think we should restart our server now. Let's try that again. Cross our fingers. Okay, awesome. And it's working. So this is great. Now we can test this in Postman. So I'm going to go into Postman. If you don't know what Postman is, it's just an awesome tool that helps us simulate a front end. It helps us make requests to our backends. Okay, so I'm just going to close this up. You should have an empty browser, headless browser, and here we can say http://local host 5000/API/auth, and then /register, and we want to test out these routes. So this should be a post request. So if we send this, we should get back register route. This is great, so that means it's working. We can go to login route, also a post request. We can send, and this is working. The next one is forgot password, and we can, this is also a post, so we can send this forgot password route, and then the reset password, and then the reset passwords get some token, so we can send that, and this should be a put request. Okay, so now that I've seen this should actually be a put request, so we did not add it as a put request in here. So let's go to our routes and change this reset password to a put request. We can now save this and go to Postman and check this out, send, and we can see reset password route. So this is great. All of our routes are working. We're able to hit them. The next thing I want to do is create our user model, and then we can start building on the logic of the controller routes. Okay, so let's do that next. Okay, so I'm just going to close all of these up for now. We don't need them. And in our models folder, I'm going to create a capital letter U, users.js file. This is just convention for models. And here I'm going to import Mongoose. So we actually don't have Mongoose installed yet, so let's quickly do that. I'm going to stop my server, and I'm going to say in the root directory, I'm going to say npm I mongoose. So Mongoose is going to help us create schemas, validate schemas, a lot of awesome things we can do with Mongoose, and I'm going to show you a few of them in this video. So let's bring in Mongoose, so we can say const mongoose equals require mongoose. And then let's create our user schema. So we can say user schema is equal to new mongoose.schema. And this function takes in an object, and in here is where we define our JSON schema. So we can say username, we need a username for a user, and then we pass an object, and this object takes in a type, and this type is going to be of string. It's going to be required. And in here we can pass an array. The first value is true. The second value is a string that contains the error message. Please provide a username. Just like that. The next field is the email field. It's going to be of type string. It's also going to be required. And the array, true. we can set here, please provide a user or a email. And then the next thing is this email is going to be unique. So we set unique equals to true. And then we want to match, so this is a nice Mongoose feature, match. We want to match it by some regular expression. So you can just go on Google and type in regular expression for email, and you'll find basically this same one. I'm just going to copy and paste it in here. So this is how the regular expression looks for checking if it is a valid email. And then after the match, we can add an error message. So please provide a valid email. Okay, the next thing we need to do is have a password field. So we say password, this is going to be of type string as well. And it's going to be required with the array set to true. Sorry about all of these pop-ups. And we can say please add a password. The next property we can set is the minimum length, the min length. And we can set that equal to 6 characters. And then we can add a select property here. So the select property just means whenever we query for a user, do we want to return the password as well? And we're going to set this to false because we don't want the password to be sent back as well unless we explicitly ask the query for it. Okay, so that's also a pretty nice feature. The next two fields are the reset token and the reset expire. So we can say reset password token, and we're going to set this equal to a type of string. And then the reset password expire, we're going to set this equal to a type of date. So here we can create the user now. So we can say user model is equal to mongoose.model and pass it the user string and then the user schema, just like this. Then we have to export this. So we can say module.exports is equal to that user model. So now we have access to this user model in wherever we're going to use it. So we're going to use this mainly in our controller's auth over here. So now we're done with the model. Let's start with our auth controller. So the first thing we need to do here is register a user. And in order to register a user, we have to think about what we're going to do. So first let's bring in the user model. So we can say const user equals require from the models folder. We want to require the user. So we're going to need a few things from the body when this route is hit. So let's extract from the body request.body. And remember, we set up this piece of middleware in our server, which is important to extract things from our body. app.use express.json. Okay. Now here we can pass in the username we're going to receive, the email we're going to receive, and the password we're going to receive. Okay, now we're going to be working with our database. So we have to change this function into an asynchronous function. And we're going to use the try catch block to catch any errors when working with asynchronous code. So this is going to look as follows. Firstly, what we're going to need to do is actually just straight up create the user. So we can say const user is equal to await, and then we take the user model, and on that user model we call create. And for this create, we pass the user model or the created user model, which is the username, the email, and the password. Now you might ask me, shouldn't we hash the password? That is correct, we should. And we're going to do that as a piece of middleware before we save this user. Okay, and once this is done, we can just respond res.status of 201 and then return a JSON object that has success set to true. And then we can just respond with the user for now. So we can set user equals to user. We can actually, with ES6, we can just do it like this. So we can just see the user being logged. And if there is an error, I just want to res.status with 500 for now. We'll create our own custom error handler in just a second. Just want to get this up and working. And in here we can pass another object with success equals to false, and then the error should be equal to that error.message. So we can save this, and let's go and test this out. So we actually first have to do the encryption of the password. So how will we do this? Well, let me show you a neat little trick I learned. Okay, so I'm going to close this auth, and I'm going to go into the models. And right below where we created our user's schema, just below the user schema, we can run a few pieces of middleware thanks to Mongoose for pre-saving or post-saving. So we can say user schema.pre, and this pre will run some function. You can say aggregate, delete one, init, insert many, remove. We want to run this before it gets saved. So here we can pass a function that we want it to run. So this is going to be an asynchronous function, and it's important to use the function declaration with the function keyword and not with arrow functions. So in here, we want to check a few things first. So first we want to check if the password is modified. So if not, this dot is modified, and then we select the field, so the password field. So this function will run and check if the password we are passing in. So in this function, we actually need the next piece of middleware. And so this will basically just check that if the password we're sending in is not modified, it won't rehash it. It would just save the current password. So in here, we can just call next. And then to actually hash this password, we need a package called bcrypt.js. So let's quickly install that. We can say npm I bcrypt.js. Okay, great. So now we can bring in bcrypt.js from up here. We can say const bcrypt, just going to call it bcrypt, and require bcrypt.js. And the first thing we need to do with bcrypt is create a salt. So we can say const salt is equal to await, because this returns a promise. We can say bcrypt.gensalt. And gensalt takes in a number, and we can set that number equal to 10. The higher the number, the more secure, but 10 should be fine. The next thing we want to do is actually change the password that was sent to us. So this syntax is a bit tricky if you don't understand the this keyword, but just type what I'm doing here. So this dot password is equal to await bcrypt dot hash, and we pass it this dot password, and we give it the salt we just generated. So it would save the new password in the password field that was passed in, and then it would save the document. So if I go back to my controller, this object is where the this keyword lives in. So this.password refers to this password field over here. So we're setting that password field equal to the hashed version of that password. And then we can save it. So then all we have to do is call next, and then it will save. So this is pretty neat. So you don't have to bloat your controller function with the hashing functionality. You can just do it right here. If we save this and let's check it out, go to Postman now, have your server running first. So we can say npm run server, connected MongoDB. Okay, we actually haven't connected MongoDB yet, so let's quickly do that first. Okay, so this is pretty easy. In our config folder, we have to go and create a db file, db.js file, and in here we bring in Mongoose. So we can say const mongoose is equal to require mongoose. Then we create a function called connectdb, and this function is going to be an asynchronous function. This function will do the following. We can add a try catch, but I'm not going to do a try catch because we're going to have our own unhandled error rejection piece of middleware to catch this. So here all we can do is say await mongoose.connect, and then we pass in the mongoose URI. So here you can see URI and then some options. So the URI I'm going to add to our config file. So in here we can say mongo underscore URI and set this equal to mongodb. It should be colon backslash backslash localhost. It's actually 2707. So this is if you are working in your local environment. So I'm going to call the database here node auth and save this. So if you are working with a MongoDB Atlas cluster, you should just add the cluster's connection string in here, and it should work exactly the same. So that is all for the package.json, the process.env folder. And in here, we can now say process.env.mongo underscore URI. And then we need to pass a few options. The first option is new URL parser, and set this to true. Then we need use create index and set this to true. Then we need use unified topology and set this to true. And then use find and modify and set this equal to true as well. So once we're done passing in the objects, the object with all of the settings, we can console.log down here and say MongoDB connected, just like that. Now we need to export this function, so you can say module.exports equals connect db. So we actually had to do the connection first, but it doesn't really matter. I hope you're still following me. We first need to connect the database before we can actually use this model, because now it's just connecting to nothing. So here we connect to the database. We have to bring this function into our server.js file. So let's go to our server.js file and let's bring in that function. So you can say connect db equals require, and then in the config folder /config folder, we can navigate into that db file. And this is important that the require of the .env package should be right at the top, because now everything else below this has access to this process.env syntax. So just below where we created, I can say connect db, and here we can say run that function connect db, just like this, and save. And the important thing to do here, if we actually go and check, it should connect to MongoDB. But now if there were something to be wrong with our MongoDB string, so let's say we do this and save and check this again, it's actually going to crash the server. So we don't want the server to crash like this. We want to handle it in a nice way. So in order to do this, I'm just going to switch. Okay, leave that like that for now. But down here, we're going to add this app.listen to a server variable. And on this server variable, we're going to do the following. We're going to say process.on and on unhandled rejections. So anywhere where there's unhandled rejections, we want to run this function. This function has access to the error variable and then some promise. So here we can say console.log, and here we want to log that error. So we can say logged error and set that equal, because these are backticks, so we can add the error variable in here. And the next thing we want to do is take that server variable we created and call the close function on it. So we are able to stop the server nicely without any crashes. So here we can say process.exit, and we want to exit with a status code of 1. So if we were to save this now and go back to our terminal, we can see it doesn't have this entire ugly crash stack. We can only see the error being logged, and here we can say Mongo parse error, invalid connection string. So this just looks and reads much easier than whatever we had up here. So yeah, you can still see it up here, but it's less overwhelming. Okay, so let's go and change our Mongo string back to the correct one. Just save it like this. And now we can save, and everything should work perfectly fine. MongoDB connected. Okay, great. Now we can go back to our register route in Postman and test it out. So we can go to /API/auth and then the register route. There should be a post request. We want to set all of the headers to application JSON. So the content type should be application JSON. Content type. And this should be application JSON right over here. Then we can go to the body tab, choose the raw, and in the raw we add a JSON object where we pass in the fields. So the first one is the username, and I'm just going to set this equal to test user. The next one is the email. I'm going to set this equal to testuser@gmail.com. And then the next thing is the password. So here we pass in our string password, which is just going to be 1234556. And now if I were to save it, we should receive a JSON string back that says success and then the user. So let's send this. And we get a JSON string that says success and then we get the user. And in here you can see the generated user ID, test user, email, and then we have our hashed password. So that piece of middleware we created in the user model over here is pretty neat. So right here. So this is pretty nice. So it first checked if we are doing something with the password. If it didn't change, it just continues because we don't want to run the rehash on the actual hashed password. That would just not be really good. So we just continue, and here we hash the password and save it to the model before it gets saved. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is handle the login. So let's go back to the controller auth controller. And in here, we want to handle the login. So what do we need for the login? First off, we need to get things from the body as well. So we can say request.body. And what do we need here? We need an email address and then a password. And it's important because we are logging in and not registering, we first have to check that we have the email and password provided. So we'll check this on the front end as well, but it's also good practice to just check it on the back end. So we can say if not email or not password, then we want to throw an error. So here we can say res.status respond.status of 400, which is a bad request, and put a piece of JSON object here with success set to false. And then we can add an error message here to say please provide email and password, just like that. And if that is not the case, now we want to actually go and check this user inside of the database, see if this user actually exists in our database. So what is the logic for that? So firstly, what we need to do is once again use a try catch and set this function equal to asynchronous because we're going to make a database request. Then we're going to do the following. We're going to say const user is equal to await, and then the user model dot find one. And this find one allows us to find one user by its email address because the email address should be unique. So we first check if this user exists. And what we want to do is we want to select the password. So we say select and then pass in a piece of string with a plus sign and we add the password field. So this will return us a user with its email ID and everything we saw and the password because we want to compare the password now. So we're going to first check. If we did not get a user back, then we want to res.status 404 for user not found and then return a JSON string of success set to false and then an error where we say invalid credentials, just like that. The next thing we want to do is actually compare the password and see that it matches. So now the user typed in the correct email. We found the email in the database. Now we want to compare the password that was sent in with it. So we can create a const isMatch variable here. And here we want to check if the user password matches. So once again, we're going to go into our user model and create a method The nice thing about Mongoose is we are able to create methods on our created user. So this user over here, we are able to run a method, and I'm going to run the method compare password and then just pass it in a password. So let's go in there, and down here we can create the following. Just below here we can say user schema dot methods, and then the method name, which we're going to call match passwords, and we set this equal to an asynchronous function. Once again, important to use the function keyword, and this function is going to receive a password from the user, the password we extracted from the body up here. It's going to receive that string password and compare it to the one in the database. So here all we want to do is return await bcrypt.compare, and this bcrypt.compare takes in the password we want to compare it to, so this password over here, and then the this keyword, this, and we want to compare it to the this.password. So what this basically means is we are going to compare whatever this method is running against. So this method will run against some user schema or some user model. And you remember here we got the user model. So we said user.find1 and it returns us that user model. And now we can run this method on this user. So we can say await user.match passwords. And this match passwords takes in the password that we got from the body. So we can say right over there, match password. And if we save this and go back here and actually save this now, this password refers to whatever the password is that we selected from the user up here. I really hope this makes sense. So we are getting the user from the database and we're populating the password field. Now we're running against that user, so against the encrypted password we received, we run the match password method inside of our models folder. Okay, so I hope this makes sense. Okay, so and if the password match, it will return true or false to the isMatch, and here we can run an if statement to check if isMatch is not true. We want to res.status once again of 404 with a JSON object of success set to false, and then an error field that says invalid credentials, just like that. The next thing we want to do, if we check both the email and the password, we want to respond with a token for this user to log in. So it should be exactly the same as up here. For now, I'm not going to respond with a token, I'm just going to respond with that actual user. We'll do the JSON web token in just a second. So here we can just respond, and I'm gonna set token here to just some gibberish string. Okay, and save this. Actually should be 200, not a 201. And now if we were to go and try out this route, this should work. First for the error, let's just say status of 500 and a JSON object with success equals to false. And then an error set to the error.message. Okay, so let's try this out. Get off, everything is still running fine. So let's go to Postman, and we actually created a user now. So let's create a new tab. I'm going to copy this URL up here and just paste it down here. There should be a post as well to the login route. And in here, the headers should be content type, application JSON, and then in the body we choose raw, and here we have to provide an email field which we're going to set equal to testuser@gmail.com, and then we need to provide the password field, and this is going to be 123456. And if we send this now, we get success false, error match password is not a function. So I actually mistyped that. So this should be match passwords, plural, and save this. And let's try this again. Send. And then we get success true with the token. So let's leave one of these out so we don't pass a password. So we should get an error there as well. False, please provide email and password. Okay, so this is the error messages are logging nicely. So we're going to create our own custom error handler. So everywhere we respond, we're going to have a custom made response and error handler. Okay, so we've done the register and login route, which are the two most important. The next things I want to work on is the actual error handlers, so we can have nice error feedback, our own custom error feedback. So let's do that in the next part. Okay, so let's start with the error handling. Firstly, I'm going to go into the utils folder and create a error response.js file, and in here we're just going to create a class. So you can say class error response extends the error class, and this class is going to have a constructor function. This constructor function will receive some message. So whenever we create a new object of the type error response, it should get a message and then a status code. This message we're going to set to the super, so the actual error message, we're going to set it to message, and this dot status code of this class or object, we're going to set this equal to status code. So this is all we need to do here, and then we can say module.export is equal to error response and save that. So that's all we're going to do in here. This is just to create some blueprint for our error response message. So if you want to add other things in here, you can add it to the constructor function and the construction arguments up there. So we can close that up. And in our middleware is where we're going to create our error handler. So this is a piece of middleware we're going to add right at the bottom of our application, which will catch all errors we pass to the next variable. So this is important if you know how Express works. Whenever we call next and we pass it some error, it automatically gets sent to the error handler middleware. So let's create that piece of middleware. We can say error.js. And this error.js is basically just going to use that error response we created and require out of the utils /utils/ error response. And we're going to have a function here, error handler. And this error handler is going to do a few things. We can do all of our error checking, error code checking, custom messages, everything we can do in here. So I'm just going to walk through it really quickly. I'm not going to explain everything here. So if you're unsure about a few things, you can just console.log and see what it actually logged. I played around in this for a little while to get this working, but it's nice to have because once you get the setup, you can basically build out any error message you will like. Okay, so we can say here the parameters is error. It should always be error first, it's important, and then request and response, and then next. So in here, let's create an error variable, and we're going to spread the error we get up here from the parameters in this error variable. And on this newly created error variable, we want to say .message and set that equal to the error.message. Next thing we want to do is check. Let's just add a space there. If the error code is equal to 11,000 or 11,000, we want, because in Mongoose this means duplicate error key, so we want to create a message and set this equal to duplicate field value entered. And we can say error is equal to new error response. So we want to have this structured error response. And if you remember, the first thing this error response takes is a message and a status code. So we're going to pass it the message we just created. And then the status code for this is going to be 400, which is a bad request. The next error we want to check for is if the error.name is equal to validation error. So in Mongoose, we get validation error. So whenever it's a validation error, we usually get an object of a lot of nested objects. So we want to take that object and create an array from it, and then add the messages to the message variable. So we can say const message is equal to object.values. So this takes an object and takes all of its values and add it and creates an array of it. So we want to get the values of the .errors field, and then we want to map over this array, and then we want to print out for each value of this array. We will want to print out or add the value .message to our message variable over here. So if you don't understand this, just go and console.log each one of these things out so you can see what it actually builds up to. And here we can say error is equal to new error response, and set that equal to message, and then 400 as well, because it's another bad request. The next thing we want to do is res.status. So all of our responses will come from the error handler. So here we can set the status code is equal to the error.status code. So the error we created either here or here or here. We're going to check the status code. If there is no status code set, it's obviously a server error. So you can just add it to 500. And then the JSON object we want to return is going to look as follow. We're going to have a success of false, because it's obviously the error handler. And the next thing we want to add is the error message. So we can set error field equal to the error.message, or if there's no message added, so if there's any other errors besides these two that we're actually creating. So this is the nice thing, you can start building your own things in here. If there's no error message there, then it's obviously a server error. Okay, and save this, and then we can actually export this. Module.exports is equal to error handler, just like this. Okay, and in order to see the error, we actually can go console.log and we can log the error. So this is where I built these two from. So if you start dissecting what error you get, you can look at the error code, error name, and you can see what the error actually has. So here the error has the errors field and so forth. So this is a pretty nice way, and this is a pretty robust way of doing it. Okay, so now let's bring this error handler into our server.js. So right at the top, I'm going to say error handler and set this equal to require, and then into the middleware, and then the error file. And this is important where we should place it. It should be the last piece of middleware. So here's a piece of middleware, here's a piece of middleware. Here we get the port, here we run the service. So right below here, I'm going to say error handler should be last piece of middleware. Okay, so we say app.use and we pass in the error handler. Just like that. Nothing else, just like that. And we can save. Okay, so this looks fine. Okay, so let's test this out. So let's quickly check what it is. App.use requires a middleware function. So let's check what I did wrong. Oh, I exported incorrectly. Module.exports. Okay, so that's my fault. And then we do not need to run it as a function here. We can just pass in the function because it will redirect everything to that function. So let's run that again. And it's working. So let's test it out. So remember, in here we're going to log the error, but we'll be returning our own custom error. So in our auth, instead of using this error over here, we can now just say next, and this next is going to be equal, pass it the error, just like this. And let's do this at the login as well. So everywhere in the login where we want to return an error, so over here we return an error, over here we return an error, and over here, and then down here, instead of creating our own errors here, we can just bring in the error response. So we can say const error response is equal to require into the utils, and then the error response. So hopefully you'll see the benefit of doing it like this. And the register, we only pass it to the next, so it get handled from there. Here inside of our routes we have custom, so we can actually return with the next, and then in here we can say new error response and set it equal to some message, and this message is please provide an email and password. So it just gives us, if you have a big application, a big API, you have a better robust way of doing it instead of repeating this thing the whole time. So this is handled in one place. Okay, so we can actually copy this. Oh, it needs a status code. Remember, it needs a status code. So in here, right after the message, we give it a status code of 400, which is a bad request. And then here we can do it again. We can return next error response. And then this should be invalid credentials, like that. And this is 404 for user not found, or bad, user not found. And then when the passwords do not match, invalid credentials again, and then just 404 with the same. Okay, this should actually not be 404, it should be 401 for unauthorized. Yeah, that looks fine. Okay, if we save this now, check it out, is everything still running fine? Go to Postman. Now we can test it out by pressing login, and we can say please provide a password. So the errors are working, and in here we can see the error is being logged. So this is the error response, please provide email and password. This is one we created because it's from the error response we created. Okay, so I'm just going to remove that console.log so we don't have a big messy console the whole time. And I'm going to clear this out. Okay, so we've got that all working. So next up, let's do the JSON Web Token and the Authentication middleware, or the Protect middleware. Okay, so let's start with the actual token part. Okay, so let's start with register. Here we don't return the user, we're going to return some token here as well for our front end. Okay, so now you can see that this response and this piece of response are exactly the same. The status code just changed from 200 to 201. So I'm going to actually refactor this into a function, and I'm going to call this function send token. So I'm going to say const send token, so right at the bottom of this file, and this function will have access to the user we just created, because we're going to need the email and the ID. Then we need the status code and then the response cycle. So in here all we're going to do is say const token is equal. And then once again, we're going to go into the user model and create another method that would generate a token for us. So everything related to the user model stays inside of the user model file. So let's create that. So we're going to once again say user schema.methods and give it a name of get signed token. And this function is going to use JSON Web Token and return us a signed token. So in order to use JSON Web Token, we should actually first install it. So let's go back to our root directory and say npm I JSON Web Token. Once this is done installed, we can require it at the top of our folder file. Okay, so up here we can say const jwt equals require JSON Web Token. Just like that. Now we can use that to say the following. We can return directly from this method. We can say jwt dot sign, and this sign takes in a few things. It takes in some payload, it takes in a secret, and then some options. So the payload we're going to pass it is just an object that contains an ID field, and this ID field is going to be equal to this dot underscore ID. So once again, this refers to the method. This refers to the object we are calling this on. So we are calling it on the user's object. So we're going to say user dot get signed token. So on this user we get, which is brought in from up here, we have access to the this dot underscore ID. So I hope this makes sense. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is pass in some secret. I'm going to create a secret inside of the process.env. So I can say process.env.jwt underscore secret. And the next thing is object of options. And the options I want to pass in here is expires in. And the expires in, I'm also going to set equal to process.env.jwt underscore expire. If we save this and go to our terminal, I want to actually generate a random digit for our secret. So we can say node and just go into the REPL. And here we can require the crypto package. And we can run on this package, we can run random bytes. And for the function, we pass in, let's say 35, a string of 35. And we want to say toString because it's going to return a buffer. And the toString should be of type hex. And if we save, we get this randomly generated string. Okay, so I'm going to use this as my JSON Web Token secret. Going to copy, going to go into my .env, and here I'm going to create two new environment variables. The first one is JSON JWT secret, and set that equal not the string version but just that token. So we have a nice long secure token. You can place anything in here. I just like doing it like this because it's pretty much secure. The next thing is JWT underscore expire. Expire, is it expires or expire? I can't remember what we said. Expire. Okay, and here we're going to set this equal to 10 minutes. So you can show 10 minutes in this fashion. So if we save this, close this file. Okay, this should return us exactly what we want. Process.env. And once again, this has access to the process.env because we use this model in the Auth folder, which is below the initiation of the package. Okay, so let's test this out now. So we're actually gonna get the token. So we can say, what did I call it? Get signed token. Get signed token. Just like this. Save. Okay, so it should return us the token now. So we can say res.status is equal to the status code that was passed in. And then here we can say JSON and set success equals to true. And then we pass in the token we just generated. So it just keeps our controller functions nice and clean. So now we're going to use this send token function all the way up here. So everywhere we return with a token. So we can say send token. So it's just a little bit of refactor. And this send token takes in a user. So we can pass in the user up here. And it takes in a status code. So this is going to be 201. And then we can add it a response. So we pass in the response variable up there. Okay, so we can copy this and do it exact same for the login. Login route, we check everything here, check everything, and down here we want to return, but instead of 200 we have a 201. Now we can save this and go check it out in Postman and make sure that everything works. So we can exit out of the REPL and then restart our server. Let's check if we have errors. No errors. Okay, so let's try this out. So now if I were to log in again with the user we already created, the password was 123456, and let's see, send, And here we got it. We got success and we got the token that was generated. So this is a nice way of handling it. If I were to go to register and test this out now and create a new user, let's say test2 user. It's actually unnecessarily long, but it's okay. And let's say test2. Let's try this out. This should send us a JSON web token as well. So we can say send and we get a JSON web token returned. So we got the token set up, we got the routes, register and login set up, we've got the authentication and the authorization checking to see everything is filled in. We have our own custom error handler. The next thing I want to do is actually start building the protected route, so we can use the piece of middleware to check the JSON web token. So let's quickly do that. In the user model, we can close that up for now, I believe. And then the error we can close up. And in this middleware, I'm going to create a auth.js. So I actually like to call this protect, but I'm going to call it auth because you can place a lot of authentication pieces of middleware in here. So what this auth piece of middleware is going to do, it's going to check for a JSON web token in the headers. So here we're going to import JWT equals require JWT. And we're going to need the user model, so we can say const user is equals to require, and then in the user models folder, we get the user. So we want to export a function called protect. And then here, this function is going to be an asynchronous function that has access to the request, response, and next. And in here, we want to create a token variable. Then we check if the request.headers.authorization exists and the request.headers.authorization starts with. So this is a JavaScript function, and we can say starts with, and then bearer. Because if you know anything about this, we're going to add bearer in front of our token to show that this is an authentication bearing token or header. And if that check resolves to true, we want to set the token variable equal to the request.headers.authorization, and then we want to split on this variable or this token or this piece of string we get from the header. We want to split on the space because this is going to look like this. If I were to go here, it's going to be bearer, and then the JSON web token will be in here. So it's going to have this space. So we want to split on the space and then take the second part, because this is going to be in the first part of the array and this is going to be in the second part of the array, and we want to set the token in here. Okay, so now we got the token, and now we check if not token. So if there was no token found inside of this header, so the header was actually there, but the token, we didn't get anything from the token. So say someone just added bearer in a header, in an authorization header, we actually have to check that there is a token. So we can check if there's no token, we want to return with our error response handler. So let's bring that in. Const error response equals require into the utils slash error response. And once again, we add the next, so the error handler will catch this, and we say error response is equal to not authorized to access this route. Authorized to access this route, and the status code of 401 for unauthorized. So here you can once again see the reuse of our custom error handler, which is really nice. The next thing you want to do is add a try catch block. And in this try catch, we're going to decode the token we just got. So we can say const decoded, is equal to JSON web token or JWT.verify. So what verify does is it actually decrypts the token as well. And we get token, we pass in the token we got, and we say process.env.jwt_secret, because it's going to decrypt or verify based off of our secret. Next thing we want to do is say const user, and we're going to find a user. So we're going to say await user.find1, and we're going to find one by ID. Okay, so we can actually say find by ID, not update, just find by ID, like this. So find by ID, and where are we going to get this ID? Well, in the token. So when we actually created the token, you remember we saved the user ID in there. So here was the payload of the token. We added the underscore ID of that user in the token. So now we're going to search by the decoded dot ID. So if we don't find a user, so if no user was found, then this token is obviously not valid. So we can say return next new error response, and we pass no user found with this ID, and we pass 404 for not found. Okay, and the next thing we want to do when we get to the end of the validation of this middleware, we can say request.user. So on the request object, we want to set that user. So that user we got here, we want to add it to the request.user, which we're going to be using in our other routes to do different things. And then we want to call next on the middleware to continue to the next piece of controller in the route. So here we can say return. So if something were to go wrong in this try catch, we want to return next with the new error response, and this is going to log not authorized. So something went wrong here, so you're not authorized to access this route, and a 401 status code for not authorized. Okay, so we can save this, and this is the entire protect function. Now we can use this in protected routes. So we can just add this piece of middleware in protected routes, and it would first check if the user actually has a token. So let's actually create a new route in our routes file. So we can say private.js, and we can just create a basic route that is going to check for a user. So we can say here const express equals require express and then we want the router variable and set this equal to express.router. Excuse me. The next thing we want to do is create that route. So we can say router.route, and this is just going to go to slash because we're not going to have any other routes, but you'll have more routes in here if you have like private routes you want to protect. And in here we can say a get request to some controller function. So we'll create that controller function in just a second. Let's just export this. So module.exports is equal to the router. So we save this. So this is not even connected to our server.js, but let's first create the controller. So in the controllers folder, we can create a private.js file. And in here, it's just going to do something really, really simple. We're just going to export get private data, let's say, and set this equal to a function that has request, response, and next. And all we're going to do here is say res.status of 200 and a JSON object of success, which is true. And then data on this route is going to be you got access to the private data in this route. Very, very simple. The idea is not behind that route, it's just how to protect that. So now we can bring that controller in. We can say get protected, get private data, equals to require, and then into the controllers folder we get the private file, and we pass in that controller function. If we save this and go to our server to connect up this routes, we can go over here where we add the API auth and just copy this down. I just press Shift Alt and down arrow, and here instead of going to API auth we go to API private, and the require route is also just routes/private. If we were to save this now and check our application, no errors, but I want to show you we're not protecting the route yet. So let's go to API auth private, make a GET request, and we can remove all of this from here, and we can send. It says you got access to this private route. So how do we protect this route? Well, it's really simple from here. All we have to do is import that protect middleware. So we can say const equals require. From the middleware we can check the auth file, and here we can bring in the protect piece of middleware and just add it in front of this route. So we can say protect, and it should protect our route now. And the reason for this is if we don't pass a JSON web token, what is going to happen, it's never going to call next. So in here, if something went wrong, it never calls next for us to continue to the next route. It just calls next to send us to an error page. So here, if I were to send now, it's just going to hang. Let's go to our cannot find module JWT. So let's see what I did wrong here. This is in the Auth.js private route. Okay, let's see. So this is auth, and we're using JSON web token, and we actually, okay, this is not JSON web token, it should be JSON web token like this. Okay, and if we save this and try again, okay, it should actually work now, and send, we can see not authorized to access this route. So now we are actually protecting this route, and in order to get access to this route, we're first going to have to log in. So let's log into a user and get a token, log in with this user, test user 1, send, and we get a token back. Let's copy this token, and now we're going to add this token to our headers, and we're going to set an authorization header and set it equal to bearer like this, and space, and then add that token. Now if you were to send, it is success true and you've got access to this route. So it actually checked and authorized us for this route now. So we've got that all set up and done. The next thing I want to do is going to start building the forgot password and reset password. What we're going to need to do there is connect with SendGrid and NodeMailer and send emails and so forth. So I hope you're still with me. I know this is a long video, but I'm doing it for you guys, and the more you learn, the better. So let's continue to do that next. Okay, so let's go to our routes, auth routes here. I'm just gonna, this is the middleware server. We don't need anything in here anymore. So we're gonna go into the controllers auth, and then just close everything here that we don't need. We're done with the register, we're done with the login. Now we're gonna start working with the forgot password and the reset password. So if we think about what is going to be needed in the forgot password, if you remember from the previous video, we're going to get the email from the body, and then request.body, and here we're going to have a try catch once again. So this is going to be an asynchronous function because we're going to check, does this user actually exist in our database? So we can say user.await user.find1, and we're going to find by that email. So we check if this user exists. So if this user does not exist, we want to return next. Sorry. New error response. And no email could not be sent just like that, because you don't want to tell the user or anyone that this email does not exist in the database or it does exist in the database. This is just a form of brute force security. So we just stop this a little bit. So here we can say 404 in the status code. And then the next thing we want to do is actually create or generate this token. So we can say const reset token is equal to something on this user we found. So once again, we're going to go into the user model. And basically what we're going to do here is generate that token, that hashed token. So down below, we can create another method called user schema.methods. And we can call this method get reset password token. This function is going to do the following. We're going to generate a reset token with the package crypto. So the same one we used for the JSON web token secret. So we can say const crypto is equal to require crypto. And then down here in the function, we can say const reset token is equal to crypto.random bytes, and we're going to set this equal to 20 random bytes, and to string and hex. Okay, so now here this should be a dot to string. Okay, so now here we have our reset token. Now we want to hash this token and save the hash version in here. So how do we do this? Well, it's easy. We say this.reset password token, which will refer to whatever object we are running this on. So the user, we're going to say user dot, what did we call this? Get reset password token, get reset password token. On this user, we're going to add that field. So reset password token. And we're going to set this equal to crypto. In order to hash this, we say crypto.createHash. Create hash. And this create hash takes in the type of algorithm. So SHA5256. This all comes from the documentation. So update. And we want to update it with the reset token. Next thing is digest and to hex. Okay, so now we created the reset password token hash and we added it to that object. We haven't actually saved it to the database yet, so this is just creating it and adding it to that object. And here we can return with the reset token. So what happened here is we added a new field to this user and we returned the reset token. So now what we can do in the auth route is we can actually save this user now. So we can say await user.save, and this will save the newly created field, so the reset password token field, to the database. Okay, so one thing we actually did not do yet here is we didn't add the reset password expiration. So this we did not add. So we actually have to do it in this function here as well. So let's go down here and say this.reset password expire and set this equal to date.now. And we want to do the following calculation. So we want to set it into the future. So for 10 minutes. So in order to get 10 minutes, you plus 10 and then times 60 times 1000. So this gives us 1 minute, and then times 10 is 10 minutes, and then just multiply, just add it to the date, the current date now. So we get the date into the future. Okay, so we can save this and then go to auth.js, and here we save it. And the reason, now you can see why we added this check if the password is modified, because now we are saving the user once again, but we did not do anything to the password. We just added these two fields. So this is what this helps check. So it doesn't go in crazy and say, oh, there's no password, whatever. Okay, so the next thing we want to do here is go and we save the user. Now we want to create the reset URL. So we can say const reset URL is equal to backticks, and we can HTTP localhost, and here we point towards our front end. So whatever domain your front end is running on, you want to add that here. So you can actually put this in environment variables and then get it from there. So here we can say 3000/password reset and then slash and then add that token. So reset token, the token we got from up here. Now we have the actual link we're going to email to the client. And then the next thing, you want a message. So we can say message we want to send to this client, and this is going to look as follow. Backticks once again, and in the backticks, the nice thing is we can embed HTML. So we can say h1, you have requested a password reset, and then just close the h1. We don't have Emmet here, so that's pretty bad. But you can create nice templates with Pug and then just put the Pug template in here instead of doing it like this, but I'm not going to do that now. Please go to this link to reset your password. Okay. And then the next thing, we want a href, a h tag, a tag, and set the href equal to the reset URL. So once they click on this link, we want to take them there. And then another important property to add here is click tracking, and set this equal to Auth. And the reason for this is when we use our emailing service, which is SendGrid, they add a weird looking link. It takes you to the same route, but they reroute it through them, and we don't want that. So we just say click tracking and set it to Auth. And here we embed our reset URL once again. So this is what the client will see, and this is where we'll redirect to. So they'll see the same thing, and then close the a tag. Now we want to send our email. So we're going to actually use a try catch here. So a try catch inside of our try catch. But yeah, we can do that. And then here we're gonna send our email. So we first have to create an email sender. And to do this, we're going to use NodeMailer and SendGrid. So let's actually go into our utils and create a sendemail.js file. And in here, we're going to import NodeMailer. So let's quickly first download NodeMailer. If you don't know what NodeMailer is, just go to NodeMailer npm. This is basically just an email, a SMT relay server. It allows you to send emails through Gmail or any other email provider. We're going to be using SendGrid. So you can say npm I NodeMailer, just like that. Okay, so now we can import that. So we can say const NodeMailer is equal to require NodeMailer and create our send email function. So this email function is going to be pretty dynamic, so you can use this across your application, not just for password resets. So here you can say options gets passed in. It's going to be an object, and first we create our transporter. So we can say const transporter is equal to NodeMailer dot create transporter, and this function takes in an object where you're going to set a few properties. The first one is service, and we're going to get the service from process.env.email_service. So this just, if you want to use a different email service, you can just change it in the environment variables. So the next field is auth, and auth takes in an object which has a user field, which takes the process.env dot email underscore username. The next one is password for just pass, process dot env dot email underscore password. So we have not set any of these things yet. We'll do that now. We're first going to set up a SendGrid account. Excuse me. First going to set up a SendGrid account, and then we're going to do that. Okay, so the next thing in this function we want to create is const mail options. And this is an object that has a from field. It has a to field, a subject, and a HTML. So this is just like any other email you'll send. The from is going to be process.env.email underscore from. So you can set your email or whatever a business email you want to send from. And then option.to. So whatever we get from the option is going to send to that email. And then subject, we're going to get options.subject. And then the HTML here is going to be options.text. Okay, just add a comma here. Then we can say transporter. So the transporter we just created, and we can call send mail on it. And this mail takes in the mail options we created. It takes in a function which has an error or some info about the email that we just sent. And here we can say if there is an error, just console.log that error for us. Else, if there's no error, then we have a successful email being sent. So we can say console.log the info so that we can just see what is logged here. Then we need to export this function. So you can say module.exports and set this equal to send email. Okay, so we're done with creating the send email. Now we have to go and add all of these environment variables. And in order to do that, we're going to first have to go to SendGrid, create an account, and then we'll go from there. So let's quickly do that. Okay, so here I'm on the sendgrid.com website. The first thing you're going to need to do is actually sign up for start for free. It's going to ask you for your email address. You're going to have to do a few verifications for your email. It's just going to have to check that it is an actual email you're entering, because this entire software or this entire service is forwarding emails based off of an actual email. So this is a really nice service. I really recommend this. They have different pricing tiers. So if you go to pricing, you can see that you get 100 free emails a day for zero cost, and after that you can scale up to a massive amount of emails, and then the price will adjust from there. So for 100,000 emails a day or a month, you can pay $30, which is not bad. So for a basic website, getting more than 100 emails a day for start is probably not going to happen. So here it is for free. And once you've signed in and logged in, and then you will be able to see this dashboard. So I have sent a few requests, obviously, because I've tested this out. Okay, so in order to start, we're going to go to our dashboard profile on the side, and you're going to go to Setup Guide. And on the Setup Guide, we're going to click on Send Your First Email. The Send Your First Email gives us two options: build a send using marketing campaign, or integrate using a web API or SMTP relay. So we're going to use this SMTP relay, Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. Okay, so we click on that. And here we have an option to use the web API. So if you haven't checked out my video on using SendGrid, I actually use this web API. It's pretty nice, pretty simple, but we're not going to be using that today. We're going to be using Node Mailer. So we're just going to click here and say choose. Here it's going to ask us for an API key name, and I'm just going to call it Node Advanced _auth. Just like that, and say create key. And here we can see our details. We can see the username is API key. So if you remember from our code here. We have the email username, which is API key, and the password, which is this really, really long string here. Okay, and then the port and everything, and the server and everything will be set up. If we add for node mailer, we can just say send grid here, and it would pick it up by automatically. So let's copy this API key, go to our process.env, and here we can say email underscore. Let's first do that in order. So we first have the service, copy that, paste that in here, and set this equal to send grid, just like this, just like this. All my words are disappearing. I've been talking for a really long time now. Email, and then we can say username is equal to API key. The next thing is the email underscore password. And this is important that you create your own account and do this on your own, because I'm going to disable this after the video, so this is not going to work afterwards. And this is important that you copy this here, because whenever you say I have updated my settings and go to next, you won't be able to see this key again. So it's important to copy it here and then just paste it right in there. We can save. What do we need? We got password and then the from. So email from. This should be the same email you verified when setting up your SendGrid account. So this was the fullstackjunkie@gmail.com. So it's important, this email should be the one you verified for your SendGrid account. Okay, what do we need more? Let's see. I think that's it. Okay, that is it. Okay, so now we can go, I've updated my settings, and click next verify, and send an email from your application using your code just integrated. If that runs without error, click verify integration. So let's keep this tab open and let's continue here. So we can save the config file, and in our user, I believe we're not going to do anything here anymore. Yeah, I think we're done here. And in here is where we're going to send our actual email now. So this is going to be the exciting part. So we can say await send email. So we first have to bring in that function at the top. So we can say const send email and go into the utils folder, utils, and then the send email file. So we can run that function, and then we have to provide a few options to that function. So this options is going to be a object. The to is going to be the user.email. So why do I say the user.email? Well, we got the user by checking if its email exists, and then we actually extracted that user from the database. So now we have access to user.email. The subject is going to be password reset request, or whatever you like here. And then the text, I'm going to set that equal to the message we just created here. You can actually name this HTML or whatever, it doesn't really matter. Okay, and the next thing we want to do is say res.status, and we want to respond with a 200, and then JSON object with success equals to true, and then the data of email sent, just like that. And if there were to be an error here, this is important. If there were to be an error, we want to take the user and set the reset password token we created and set it equal to undefined, because we don't want that to stick around anymore. The next thing is on the user request password expire, we want to set that expire, we want to set that to undefined as well. Now once we've done editing this user, we want to save it again, so we can say await user.save, and then when we're done, we want to return with next and a new error response. So now you can start seeing that this custom error handler really saved us. In the beginning it was kind of, oh, why do we have to do this? But now we kind of see the nice thing about it. So we can say email could not be sent. So the exact same we added up here, email could not be sent. And then a status code of 500, because this is a server error this time, but we still add it here. And then down in the last catch, we just want to return with the next and pass in that error. And save this. So we're done with setting up our forgot password. Now we can actually go and test it out in Postman. So I'm gonna restart my server, run server. Let's see if we have any errors. Doesn't look like it. This is great. Okay, so let's go to Postman and let's make a post request to http:/localhost 5000 /API/auth/forgot password. And this forgot password is going to have content type of application JSON, content type of application JSON, and then we go to the body tab, raw, and then in here we have to provide the email that actually exists in our database. So the important thing here is it should be an actual email so we can test it out, and currently we don't have a real email in this database. So let's first actually register a real email. So we can say register, and in here I want to add my Lloyd JV Rensburg at gmail.com. Let's see if that's correct. jvrensburg at gmail.com. My password is that, and username, just gonna set this to Lloyd. And now we can send this. It should create it successfully, and it did. Now we can go to the reset or forgot password route and add that Lloyd jvrensburg at gmail.com, and let's send. Cross our fingers. Success, true, data, email was sent. So let's go into my emails and check gmail.com. Let's see if it was sent. And here we got another email. We got the previous one when I was demoing the project, but here you got a new email. You can see it's the same time as now. And we got the reset password link. So this is great. The last route we should build on now is the actual reset password. So this is pretty simple. So let's quickly do that now. Okay, so we can close this one up here. And basically all we're going to do here, if you remember from the video where I explained this process, we're going to recreate the reset token. Reset token. And we're going to recreate it by saying crypto.create hash. And we're going to reset this based off of the reset token we got from the request params. So if you remember in our routes, here we have this reset token in the param. So when we make a request to this route, reset password, we send the created token in there as well. So if I actually go to my database and I say show DBs, and I say use, what did I call it? node_auth, and I say db.users.find, and I pretty print them, we can see that there is this reset password expiration and reset password token being logged or being added to this user. So now we have to go and recreate this token based off of the token we get in the URL. So in order to do that, we're going to say reset password token, and we should actually bring in the crypto module. So we can say const crypto is equal to require crypto. And in order to recreate this, we do the following. We give it a create hash and the SHA-256.update, and we pass in the request.params.reset token, and then digest with hex. Okay, so now we have recreated that password. Now we have to search for a user that has this same token in their document. So we can say try catch once again, and this is going to be an asynchronous function because we're going to work with the database. And in here we say const user equals await user.find1. And we want to find the following parameters, where the reset password, what did we call it? So let's go into the model, reset password token. So where the reset password token is equal to the reset password token. So they have the same name, so we can leave it like that. And where the reset password expired has the following query. So in MongoDB we can say greater than. So we want to check where this expires date is greater than it currently is now. So this ensures us that the token is still valid. So that the expiration date that is saved under the user is still greater than the actual time now. And once we got that, we can check if there is no user. We want to return with next and a new error response and add invalid reset token. So they know it expired, and 404 for bad request. Not 404, 400, sorry. And then once we pass this, so it's actually there, we got a user. We want to take that user and set the password equal to the request.body.password. So now we're going to send the new password. And here we want to just set the reset password token equal to undefined, because we already used it now, so we don't want the user to reuse it again. So we're just going to clear this out. The same goes for the expiration date, expire, just like that. And then you guessed it, we have to say await user.save, and now it's going to resave the password and hash it, because in the user model this part is going to pick up that it was modified. Okay, so then we just want to return res.status 201.json, and we want to have a success of true and the data of password reset success, and that is that. And then if there's an error, next.error. Make sure I added the next. Yeah, I did. Okay, so that is done with this route, and we're basically done with the API now. So let's actually test it out now. We save this. Is there any errors? No errors, looks like it. So let's go try this. That email, that previous email I got, let's actually try that. So you can say gmail.com. Let's actually try this email, this string I got here. So I'm just going to copy this part because that's the important part. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go to Postman, and I'm going to create a new tab. I'm going to make a put request to http localhost 5000 /API/auth/ reset password, and then I paste in that created reset token. And in the headers, this is gonna take in content type, application JSON. On the body we go to raw, and now we have to pass in a password field, whatever we would like to reset this password to. So I previously had, if you remember, 123456. So I want to change this to 123457 and send. Let's hope this works. Invalid reset token. Okay, so obviously 10 minutes has gone by. So let's actually try and resend this email. So I'm going to send it again. Email sent. Okay, so I'm just going to go here and refresh. We should get 3 now. Great stuff. So it's working. Let's get the new token. I'm going to copy this token, go back to Postman, paste that token in here, just like this. And then I'm going to reset the password. So let's see, send, and it still gives us invalid token. Okay, so that is not correct because it is an actual valid token. This is weird. Am I doing it to the right route? Localhost 5000 API reset password, and then the token. So we're obviously missing something. Let's actually open this, and I'm going to copy it from here. Let's try that again. Paste it in here and send. Password reset success. Okay, so I obviously missed something. Okay, so this worked now. Sorry about that. And now we can go back to login and try logging in with our new password. So we can say login. Going to remove the username. And I'm going to try and log in with the old password and send. Invalid credentials. Now I'm going to add the new password and say send. And boom, we're logged in. Okay, so our entire API is done now. We have the entire authentication workflow set up and done. We have the protected route. We're sending emails and all of those nice jazz. So I'm going to do a quick run through of the client. This is probably the easiest part of this entire application. And I'm going to be pasting most of the style sheets in the client so that I don't bore you with that. So let's do that next. Okay, so let's go to our React application over here. And all I'm going to do is going to the source. And I'm just going to clean out some of the things we don't need. We don't need the app.css, app.test.js. We don't need that. Index.css we'll keep. Index.js, logo.svg can go. And then the setup test can go as well. And then in our index.js, we want to just clean this up. I hate it when it does that. And index.css, we can actually clear everything out here. I'm just going to paste a few styles in there in just a second. I'm going to change this app function to a functional arrow function like this. I'm going to remove everything from the body here. And then I'm just going to say React app. Save this. We can remove the app.css as well as the logo.svg. So we can save that. Okay, so this all seems to be fine. Okay, so let's just run this and see if it works. So in our VS Code terminal, we're in the client, so we can say npm start to just see what it gives us. We can actually close this up now. It's just going to give us a React app that just says React app or app component. React app, there you go. Okay, so let's start with creating our folder structure in here. So we're going to have a components folder. And in the components folder, we're going to have two subfolders. We're going to have routing, which is going to contain our private route component. And the next one is going to be screens. And let me start by adding the CSS of the index.html. These are just a few styles. I'm not going to bore you with this. If you want to see more CSS things, just let me know in the comments down below. But I'm going to save this. I'm going to close this up. Then I'm going to go into my app.js. And here we're going to start building our application. So first things first, we're going to need to install a few things. The things we're going to need to install are as follow. We can say npm I and react-router-dom, and then we're going to need Axios. So these are the only two things we're going to need in here. So you can install that, and remember this is in the client directory. Okay, so Axios is just going to be to make requests to our backend and get this set up. Okay, so we got that done. And then one thing I want to change in my package.json is just add a proxy. So we can say proxy. This is important to do this so that we don't get the cross-origin error. So you can say HTTP //1. So localhost, you can just say one. You can actually just say localhost, but I like typing it out like this. It just looks fancier. Just kidding. And then the port we're running on is 5000. We can save this. Now it will, anything that has Axios request will be routed to there if it doesn't have its own specified. Okay, but in the app.js, I'm going to do this really quickly. We have to import the browser router, the route, and the switch. So we can say import from React router DOM. And here we can import browser router, and as router we can import switch and the route. And in here we're going to build our router. So we can build our router, and in the router this should actually be the topmost component. And in here we're going to have the div of app. So turn it like this. And then in here we have switch, which is going to have different route components. So the first route component is going to be our exact path of login, and it will load a component called login screen. So we don't have that yet. So the next one is going to be the register and the register screen. The next one is the forgot password, and then we're gonna name it forgot password screen. Let's just make this smaller. And then the last one is going to be the reset password. If we remember from our email we sent when we created the actual reset URL, let me just take you back there. We created the front end link. So we said http:/localhost 3000, which React app is running on 3000. Then we have password reset. So this should be the same. This should actually be password reset, because it's going to route us to that, and then some reset token, just like this. And then this is going to take us to the reset password screen. Okay, if we save this, we don't have any of these screens yet, but let's first create our private route. So in our components, let's go to the routing, and here I'm gonna call this private route.js, and this private route is going to look as follows. So I'm just going to run the component snippet. RAFCE creates us an arrow component. We can remove this. We want to import from React Router DOM the redirect and the route, and here we want to go to from React-router-DOM, and we're going to build out our component. So first off, we can actually do the return like this, and this should be a route, and in here is where all of the magic happens. So we want to first off spread everything we get from this route, so we bring that in here. So as props we can say component and set the component equal to a component class or component object, and then rest. So we spread all of the things that we pass in the route. And the next thing we want to do is render. And this render takes in a function. And this function will do the following. This function receives some props. And this function will check, is there something in our local storage? So we can say get item. And we're going to name it Auth token. And we want to check if we do find this in our local storage, then we want to return with a component. So whatever component we passed in here, so remember we say component, so whatever we pass in here, we want to render that now. So we can spread the props. And if this is not the case and we did not find the token in there, we just want to redirect to /login. This will kind of block the entire process of that user visiting this route. So this is the entire private route. It's pretty simple. We use React Router DOM. We create a route. We check if there's something in the local storage. You can actually make this a function and say is logged in, and if it is, you render the component that it is supposed to render. Else just redirect to the login page. Okay, so we're done with that. So we can actually import it here. So routing, import private route from component / routing / private route. And right at the top, we can say private route, and this will receive the following things. We can say exact path, because this will be spread into this component, and just the home route. So you have to be logged in before you can visit the home route. And the component it should render is the private screen route. So we don't have any of these screens yet. So we're going to do that in just a second. So let's actually import them already. So screens, and then we'll go create them. Import private route from the component / screens, and then the private route screen, or the private screen. Sorry, not private route, just private screen. This should be private screen as well. Okay, so now we can just copy this down for all of the others. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and let's just copy that. Login screen is going to be login screen. Then the register screen is going to be register screen. Let's do that for all of the rest. Forgot password screen, and then reset password screen. Oh. Okay, so now we brought all of them in. Now I actually have to go and create them. So I'm gonna close up this auth. I'm gonna go into screens and create these files. So the first one is private screen.js. We're gonna need a private screen.css as well. The next one is login. Hate it when it does that. The next one is login screen.js, and we're going to create a login screen.css as well. Register screen.js, register screen.css, register screen.css. Okay, I'm just going to close these up for now. I don't want them to open like this. Okay, we need the forgot password screen, forgot password screen.js, and then the forgot password screen.css. And then the last one is reset password screen.js, and then reset password screen.css. Okay, that is done. So first off, I'm just going to paste in all of the styles. So let's start with the login screen, or the register screen CSS. Register screen.css, the styles are going to be of the following. You can just go into the GitHub repo and copy them. This is how the styles look like. Very simple. You can save. Go into the login screen.css. Gonna copy all of it from here, paste it in here. It looks very much similar to the register. Save that. Let's go into the forgot password screen. Gonna copy that. Go into forgot password, paste that in here. Save that. And the private screen, I don't think this really has much CSS. Yeah, it actually doesn't have any CSS, so that's pretty cool. Yeah, we can actually delete this file. Not going to need any CSS there. And then the reset password is going to look like this. We can save that. So now all of our CSS should have styles in. Okay, great. I'm not going to focus on the styles here. So let's start building. I'm going to start building the reset, or let's go to register, login, and private. Okay, so the register screen is going to have the following structure. We're going to import use state, from React. Then we're going to import Axios from Axios. We're going to import the link component from React Router DOM. From React Router DOM. And then we want to import the CSS. So we can say import register CSS. Now we want to create our functional component. So we can say register screen is equal to functional component. And right at the bottom we can say export default and then the register screen component. And in here we're going to be building. First off, let's get the JSX ready. The JSX is going to be a div with a class name of register-screen. And then we're going to have a form, which is going to have a class name of register-screen _ form. And in here, we're going to have a h3 with a class name of register screen _ title. And we're just going to say register over here. Next thing we need is a div with a class name of form control. So form group. These styles are in the index.css. You can see it over here because it's universal styles for the login and the register. We can just reuse that. And in here we want to have a label. The label should be for name. And we can add here username. Then we want to input, which is of type text. It's going to have a field of required, a property of required. It's going to have an ID of name so that it matches the label. It's going to have a placeholder of enter username. Then we're going to have a value, which we're going to set equal to username. And this username value, we're going to add state in just a second. So we'll do that now. Then we have an onChange, where we're going to call the onChange function. And this onChange function is going to call set username. And we're going to set it to equal to e.target.value. And the e should be passed in over here. And that should be that. So let's actually create that piece of state. So we actually have to return this entire blob over here. So let's do that. We say return. And then just wrap these in there. Now we can bring in that piece of state. So we can say const username and set username is equal to useState and set that to empty string. Okay, so that should be satisfied. Okay, the next thing we need is the email form group. So I'm just going to copy this form group. Copy this and paste it in here. This is going to be email and for email, and the text, the type is going to be email, require true, name, email, enter email address, or let's just say enter email. This value is going to be email and the set email. So let's create that piece of state as well. Copy this down. Email, set email. Okay, this looks fine. Everything looks fine there. Then we need to create two more. Copy this, paste it. This is going to be for password. This type is going to be password required, and then the ID of password, enter password, the password variable or state, we're going to create that now, and then set password. Let's create that piece of variable or state, password, and then set password. I've said that so many times now. Okay, and then the last form group is going to be for the confirm password. And let's set the label to confirm password. We can add the confirm password here, and in the ID down here it's still a password, still required, and here we can just say confirm password. This is going to have its own piece of state, confirm password, and then set confirm password. Like that, we can save, and we can go and create that piece of state. Did I actually name it correctly down here? Capital P. Okay, and then confirm password. Okay, so we're done with setting up the state and two-way binding. So let's just add the button down here. We can add a button. This is going to be of type submit. It's going to have a class name of btn dash primary, and in here we're just gonna say register, and just below the form, or just below this button, we're actually gonna have a span that says already have an account question mark, and then we want to add a link component to link it to the login page. So we can say login and then to the / login route. This should have a class name. Whoops. Class name of register dash screen underscore subtext. We can save this now. And this actually should all be fine. Now we can create the logic for when we have this on submit. So we can say on submit, and we can say register handler. Okay, so the register handler is going to look as follow. We're going to do all of the HTTP connection there. So const register handler is equal. It's going to have a E, so we can say e.prevent default because it's a form event. And in here we can create our config variable for our Axios. So config is going to have a header, and set the header equals to content dash type of application / JSON. And then if we want to check if the password is not equal to the confirm password, then we know there's an error. So then we want to create an error. So in order to create an error, we actually have to create an error piece of state. So here we can say error and set error. Once we come in here, we can say password, set password, and set that back to nothing. The same for confirm password. So confirm, set that to nothing. And here we want to run a set timeout to remove the error after 5 seconds, so it doesn't just stay there the whole time. So after 5,000 milliseconds, and here we want to set error to nothing. Okay, so we haven't set the error yet, but we want to return with that error, so we can say return set error, and here we want to say passwords do not match, just like this. Okay, great. Next thing we want to do is in a try catch. So this function is actually going to be asynchronous because we're going to be doing Axios request now. So in here we're going to say const, we're going to destructure the data from the Axios request, and we're going to say await Axios.post. Remember, it's a post request to register to /API/auth/register. And in here we have to pass in a few things. We need to pass in an object containing the username, the email, and the password. And it's important that these are named the same that you are destructuring in your API. And then we just want to pass the config object. Once we send this, we will receive something back, and that something is going to be our token. So we want to set item in the local storage, so local storage.set item. We want to set auth token, that because that is what we're going to be looking for in our routes, and we're going to set it equal to data.token, because remember in the API we send back a token. And once that is done, we can go to history.push and to just the home route. We should actually bring in push in the props of this function. So up here we can say history, just like that. Then we redirect and everything went well. If there was an error, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to say error is equal to error dot response, because on Axios it first gives us error, then a response, then the data, and then the error we created. We created the error field on any error, so it will be logged here. Then we want to say set timeout and run a function again after 5 seconds that is able to reset the error and set it back to nothing. If we save this, our register should be done. Everything is done. Why is it logging here? We never actually use that. Okay, it's because we want to display it. So just below the heading over here, we're going to do a ternary operator, or a check. We check if there is an error in the state, then we want to create a span and log that error. So this just means it's kind of like a shortcut to an ternary. An AND operator always takes the last true value. So it checks that both is true and then it returns the last one. So we want it to return this one. And we're going to give this a class name of error.message or error-message. We save this now. Now everything in our register should be fine. I'm actually going to copy this entire register component. Copy this. I'm going to my login screen and paste it in here, because this should be very similar. We're just going to have less fields. So in here we bring in useState again. We have Axios, we have React routed on, but in here we need to bring in the login screens CSS. Okay, and we're going to change this to login screen and save. Okay, so let's just quickly change up a few things here. First off, we're going to have a use effect. Okay, so we're not going to have this confirm password, and we're not going to have a username. What we're well going to have is a use effect, and we're going to check here. And the reason we just do this is because we want to actually check that the user can't get to this route if he or she is already logged in. We should actually do this in the register as well, so I'll just copy it in there as well. Use effect. So what I mean by this is once the user is logged in, we don't want them to come to the login or register page once they're already logged in. So that wouldn't make sense. Okay, so this use effect is going to look as follows. We're going to say if if local storage dot get item has a auth token in it, then we just want to redirect. So once again, we bring in history over here, so we can just say history dot push to that route. And on that route, we'll also check that it is a valid token. So this is just a nice way of handling this redirects. So history, we put in the dependency array. And then we have, instead of the register handler, we're going to have the login handler. And in here, we once again prevent default. We have the config. We don't have to do this check over here. We're straight up going to go to the try catch. We're not going to have a username passed in, and we're going to go to /login. The rest of it stays the same. Yeah, the rest of this is the same. We're going to copy this and add this to the form handler down here. And everywhere where it says register screen, we have to change that to login screen. So I'm just going to select one and Control D and change this to login screen. And in here, I'm just going to change this to login as well. Let's see. The error should be the same. Username, we don't need this form group over here anymore. Oops. And these should stay the same. We still need the email, still need the password. We don't need this form group down here anymore. Okay, and the button should say login, not register. And then these class names should be login subtext. And this should actually say don't have an account. Do not have an account. And then this should link to register. And here we can just say register. And save. This should be the end of this route. You can actually copy this piece here. Copy. And go to the register screen. And then paste that in here as well. Just bring in use effect as well. Use effect. And save. Login is done. Register is done. Let's do the private route now. The private screen. Private screen is going to be very simple. I'm going to paste the login here again. Oh, this is actually not that. Okay, let's just do it from scratch. We can say import. We're going to bring in use state and use effect. Oops. From React. And let's say import Axios, because here we want to fetch the data for this private route. So Axios, and import the styles. We don't need styles for this, so we can say const private screen is equals to props, and we're going to destructure the history out of the props. And then we're going to do the following JSX, so we can return this piece of JSX, and we can say export default private screen. Okay, so let's create the JSX. This is really simple. First off, we're going to check if there is an error. Then we want to do something else. We want to do something else. So let's actually create those pieces of state. So the first piece of state is going to be const error and set error equal to use state const private data, and set this equal to set private data use state. I hope I'm not going too fast for you guys. I just feel like this is not what you guys are here for, and this is a pretty advanced one, so yeah. Okay, so in here, the use effect, we're going to do the following things. We're going to check if there's nothing in the local storage .get items. Get item, if there's no auth token in there, we want to immediately redirect, because you're not allowed to view this. So we can say history .push and go to the login route. So you can't come here if you're not logged in. And once you get to this page and you are logged in, we want to fetch private data. So this will make an Axios request. That's why it's asynchronous. It's going to make an Axios request to our backend. So we can say config equals the header and set this to content dash type application / JSON. I don't think you actually need to do this, but I think it's only when you use fetch. But you only need to pass in here the authorization token. So let's pass that in here. That authorization. Remember from Postman when we did this. Now we can say bearer is equal, and then local storage .get item, and then that auth token. Just like that. Okay, so now we'll have this config in here. Headers, not header. And here we want to add a try catch when we do our Axios request. So we can say const destructure the data once again. And here we want to await Axios dot get. And we want to go to API / private. And we want to send the config in the headers. So we want to set the headers and send that along. If this is done, we set private data, which we actually have. Well, we did set private data, and we want to set that equal to the data.data. So remember, on our object we return, or JSON return, we had a data field which says you have access to this data. So now we want to add that here. Then we want to say local storage. If there was an error, we want to remove item. So if there was an error with requesting over here, then we know it's an invalid token. So we can say auth and just remove that token. We can set the error to you are not authorized. Please log in. Just like that. And we can actually redirect them if we'd like, but I just left it like this. And then once we're done creating this function, we actually want to call this function. So you can't directly call the function from outside. So you can't add this function outside of the use effect. It has to be inside, and then we can call it here. And then in the dependency array, we just want to add the history. Okay, so that is the use effect when the page first gets loaded. So once the page gets loaded, we want to check. If there is an error, then we want to respond with a span of class name error dash message, and we want to add the error in there. Else, if that's not the case, we want to return with a fragment, because between these fragments I'm going to add a div with style. Just gonna hard copy the styles in here. Background of green and a color of white. And then in here I just want to add whatever we got from the private data in our state. So if I save this, it's going to reformat it nicely for us. And then I want to add a logout button. So in here we have a logout button that says logout, and this is going to be on click. So whenever we click on this, we want to have a logout handler, and this logout handler we'll create here. So we can say const logout handler is equal to the following. Okay, we want to remove the local storage, so remove item. The auth token we want to remove, and then we just want to redirect. So history.push. Oops. And then redirect to /login. Okay, so this should work. Save that. All of this should be fine. We did export it. Yeah, this looks fine. Okay, so we're done with this route. Okay, the next route we want to do is we've got the register, private, login, forgot password. So let's quickly do the forgot password, and then we're almost done. Almost done. Just stay with me, guys. I'm actually going to, let me copy this route. I'm going to copy this route or this component. I'm going to paste it in here. I'm going to walk you through this. So first off, we have use state and Axios. Then we bring in the CSS. Then we have our component. We export the component down here. So we have our 3 pieces of state. So we first get the email, then we check if there's an error, and then we have a success. So if we forgot password and we send the email and we get a success, then we want this to show. Then we got the forgot password handler. So let me go to the JSX. So we have a container which is forgot password screen. We have a form with a on submit handler with the forgot password handler. And then in this screen we have a title, forgot password. We have an error. If there's an error, then the error gets loaded. We have success if there's success in the state, and then the success gets loaded. Then we have a div here which is a form group that basically just asks you for your email. And then we have an input with the email and two-way binding. Then we have a submit button, which submits the email to submit this form, and this form handler is what we're going to look at now. This form handler has an event, asynchronous as well, because we're going to work with Axios. Then we're going to prevent default on this form. We're going to create the config. It should be headers, I believe. Not really sure. Headers or header, I think both works. And config, then we can try catch in here. In the first part of the try, we get the data from Axios post, and then we make an API auth to the forgot password route. We send in the email in the body, and we have the header config. Once that is sent back, we get the set success in the state, and here we just set the success equal to whatever we return from our API, which is email was sent, and then we'll just show that success over there. If there's an error, we do the same. We set the error in our error state, we reset the email, and after 5 seconds we clear that error. So that is it for the forgot password screen. So I'm going to save this, I'm going to close this up, I'm going to go into the reset password screen, and I'm also going to copy this one in as well, because this video is getting a little bit long and this is kind of repetitive, and if you read through this you kind of understand what it does. Once again, we bring in link, use state, and Axios, and then the style sheet. Here we create, I see we're not actually using this history, so we can actually remove that. So here we create our password, because we're going to receive 2 passwords from the user on this page. The first one is the normal password, and then the confirm password. We have those pieces of state, then we have the error and success. Okay, let's go down and check the JSX, it's rendering. We have a div container again, once again a form with a reset password handler, which will make our request to our backend. Then we have a H3 with reset password, the error being logged if there's an error, and the success being logged if there is a success. And then we just added a link to the success message so that you're able to click and redirect to the login to log in after you reset your password. You can actually let the application redirect directly to the login page once the reset is successful, but I like to do it like this. Okay, and then we have the form groups once again for the normal password, and then the confirm password, and a reset button. Okay, so let's go check what this reset password handler does. In here we prevent default for the form again. We have our content headers, our headers we set. Then we check if these 2 passwords do not match. We remove them, we clear their state, and then we set a password and return. We don't want to do anything else further if they do not match, so that's why we return. Then in the try catch, we make our Axios request to API auth password reset, and here is where we get the token. So we destructure from our props the match prop, and on this match we can say match.params.reset token. So if you remember from our app.js, here we said we're going to get a reset token in our params, so that is what it's basically destructuring. It's getting that, and then it's adding it to our backend route password reset. So this is how we connect those two again. Then we just pass in the new password and then the headers. We console.log the data to see if anything happened here. We can actually remove this. We don't have to console.log anything. And here we set the success equal to data.success. We catch the error if there was any, and this is the same as previously. So we can save this now, and our application should be done. So in order to test this out, we have to run both the front end and the back end at the same time. But let's first actually test out the front end to see if everything looks fine. So we can say npm start in the front end folder. Let's cross our fingers and hope everything works. No errors seems to be logged. Let's check it out. Okay, nothing here. So let's go to /login. Okay, this is great. So I think I actually do have an auth token in here. Let's see. Application. I don't have an auth token, so it's actually pretty strange. It should redirect me over here. Let's see why it is not doing that. Okay, so in our components, routing, private route, it should redirect to /login. Okay, so in our screens, private screen, we check if there is no item in the local storage.get item auth token, then history.push back here. Okay, so why isn't it doing this part? It's actually supposed to redirect me here. So in our app.js, let's check this out. Private route, exact path. Then the component should be private screen. Okay, so let's just see everything is loading nicely. This is the login screen. We can go to the register screen. I see it doesn't have the forgot password over here, so let's quickly add that in. So inside of our login screen, we're going to do the following. We're actually going to add some tab indexes here as well. So the login screen, the first tab is the username or the email, so you can say tab index and set this equals to 1. And then the tab index for the password is 2. Then the button tab index is 3. Save that. And in here, our password label, we actually want to add a link. So I want to add a link tag that can link us to the forgot password route. Forgot password, just like this. And here we can say forgot password with question mark, and this link should actually have a class name as well. You can give it a class name of login.screen _ forgot password, and then we give it a tab index here of 4. So if we save this and go back, we're able to tab through in the specific order. See, it skips the forgot password, then it goes password, then here, and then there. So that's what that tab index does. So now we can click here and view the forgot password. And the next thing we need to do is figure out why is it not redirecting us. This is pretty strange because this is exactly how I coded it. So I'm obviously missing something small. So in here somewhere. You know what? This should be a direct, be like this. Because this means it returns this. It shouldn't be curly braces. I will add something in the video to show you to fix this before we get to this point. But yeah, I think this should work now. So let's try it out. Let's go to just slash and we get redirected. Oh my goodness, thank goodness. Okay, so this works. So now we can actually test it out because the backend is running as well. We can see the backend is running over here. So let's test it out by logging in. We already have a created user. So let's try it out. Lloyd JV Rensburg at gmail.com. And the password was 123457. Let's log in. And voila, it works. Yeah, thank goodness. I was starting to worry a little bit there. Okay, so this works. If we press log out, it should redirect us. If I try and go back in, keeps redirecting us. Okay, so if I go to register, create a new user. Actually, let's test it out. Test at example.com. Password 12345 1234. Let's send. Passwords do not match. 12345 12345. Register. password is shorter than the maximum length allowed of 656 and register, and then we made it in. So this is great. Okay, so the login and register is working. Let's test the forgot password. So I'm going to go to my Gmail. Going to delete all of these over here. And let's try the forgot password. I'm going to enter my Lloyd JV Rensburg at gmail.com. And I'm going to send email. Email sent success. So this is great. Let's go to our inbox and refresh till we see something. This is awesome. Yeah, we see this. Okay. Now we have localhost. We can click here. This should redirect us. Boom. This is so cool. I love this. Now we can reset the password. We can say 1 2 3 4 5 6 again. 1 2 3 4 5 6. It previously was 1 2 3 4 5 7. So let's reset password. And let's see what's going on here. Failed to load resources. 404. Okay, so let's see the error. Network tab. It's actually not going to show us this. Let's see what it logged down here. It doesn't log anything here, which is pretty strange. Reset password. Let's see. Okay, so we do send the password. And are we making a put request here? That's the big question. Reset password. We are making a put request here. That is correct. Okay. Oh, I was so excited there for a moment. Everything is going to work flawlessly. This token that most likely expire because we. Okay, so it's something is breaking when we request. So HTTP localhost password reset. What did we call it here? I promise you I named the route differently. Password reset. And in my backend we can go to, let's just close all of this up. In my backend in the controllers auth or in the routes we have reset password. I knew it. Okay, so this should be reset password. And then in our screen over here, our reset password screen, this should redirect to reset password. Let's save that. Let's try again. Okay, this is going to work. Now. Let's refresh this. Okay, and let's say 1 2 3 4 5 6. 1 2 3 4 5 6 and send. Password reset success. Yes, okay. This is great. Let's try and log in now. Try the login. Lloyd JV Rensburg at gmail.com. 1 2 3 4 5 6 and login. Boom, and it all works. Oh my goodness, I'm so glad. Sorry about a little bit of bugs here and there. I'm going to actually leave this in the video because this just shows you that not everything happens perfectly. Sometimes you have to do a little bit of debugging to find out what went wrong. And yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it's really a long video again, but I'm hoping you guys like the long content where you actually create something that's valuable and that's worth your time. And if there's some point in the video that you did not follow, please let me know in the description down below. And if you did like this video, please smash that like button, subscribe, put on your bell notification for whenever I post another video. And then that is it for this video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.